goes a little something like.
Okay, hello, Literates. I'm brittwriterly, and welcome back to Writer's Ambition. For those of you who hanging in since episode 1, you're the real one, and for those of you who are just finding my humble channel, welcome. We hope you stay a while. So, as you can see, guest. Oh my gosh, an amazing guest who I've spoken about on my channel several times. So I'm just going to introduce her, even though y'all probably already know exactly who this amazing writer is. So Liselle Sambury is a Trinidadian Canadian writer of young adult fantasy. She describes her brand of writing as messy Black girls in fantasy situations, and she does it so well. Her debut novel, Blood Like Magic, this beautiful thing, was named Chicago Public Library's Best of the Best and was a 2021 shortlisted finalist for the Governor General's Award for English Language Children's Literature. The sequel, Blood Like Fate, is coming out August 9th of this year, and her YA horror debut, Butcher Birds, is forthcoming in spring 2023. And I peeped on her website. There's an untitled project coming after that. Lizelle is being very productive for us. We really appreciate it. Also, Lizelle's YouTube channel documents her writing journey through blogs, and it also shares invaluable tips for those of us coming up behind. So if you haven't subscribed, head on over to Liselle Sambury and hit that big red button. It is such a refreshingly useful channel. I could really go on and on for days about Lizelle's accomplishments and contributions, but let's just talk to her. So welcome, Liselle, and thanks so much for gracing Writer's Ambition with an interview.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here, and thank you for that wonderful intro.
My pleasure. So I know you've already done like a couple of interviews, or several interviews really, on Blood Like Magic, and you've done like spoiler talks on your channel. So I want to talk to you about your writing journey as a whole, like all the different things that you do as a writer, so we can sort of mix it up a bit.
Sure.
So almost a year after Blood Like Magic, and only months before Blood Like Fate, how are you feeling about your debut duology specifically, and then about author life in general?
I'm feeling good about it. I think I have ups and downs. Like, I did this very long Instagram post the other day because I was up in the middle of the night and I was laying in bed and I was like, what if my second book flops? And what then? And like, what do I do? And should I be doing a lot more stuff than I'm doing now? Because it kind of feels like I'm just chilling, and like maybe I should do more. And am I going to regret that I didn't do more stuff? And I kind of had to pull myself out of that. And I was reminded from a picture of my old office before it looked like this. I was reminded of, like, in 2020, I had like recently been laid off from my job, and I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. And I kind of was just kind of like, well, I still have writing. And so I cleared out an office space for myself. And then now, a couple of years later, I'm a full-time author. I've got projects on the go, some secret projects even on the go to come up. And I just was like, oh yeah, like back then, like this was unimaginable. And this is what I'm living in. I'm so excited and happy about the things that I've accomplished. And I know that these sorts of feelings will like cycle around, because I'm sure I'm pretty like positive I also had the same moments with Blood Like Magic where I was like, should I be doing something? Should I be doing more? And I always kind of have to remind myself to bring it back to the book, because that was the thing I had to, like, that's the thing I have the most control over. And like, that's what I'm doing to try and bring success to myself as an author, is to write the best book I possibly can. And that's what I feel I wrote when I wrote Blood Like Fate. I wrote the best possible book I could. That's the same way I felt when I did Blood Like Magic. And so for my duology as a whole, I'm really excited about the direction of it. It feels very complete, but still, leaving room if in the future I wanted to do spin-off stuff or things like that. But it feels very much like the completion of Voya's story, and I'm really happy about it, and I'm really excited about it. So I feel really good about the duology as a whole. And with author life, I'm really excited. This year, I had a lot of unexpected surprises at the end of 2021. I ended up, getting signed on for more projects than I thought would ever be coming to me. And so I've got some exciting things to reveal in 2022. So I'm very happy about having that. And, last year was my first year being a full-time author purposely and deciding to do that and deciding for that to be my career. And, I always have this concern of like, can I keep this up and like, can I keep doing this? And I've been able to continue to keep it up and I feel very secure about the next couple of years. And so feeling very positive about my writing career as a whole. And yeah, just kind of like waiting to see what comes next. I'm in that interesting kind of lull period where it's like, it's not quite time to push the second book super, super hard. And so I'm kind of just focusing on things I have going on in the background and books that I'm working on. Some secret stuff that I'm working on and some stuff that is known, like the anthology project I'm a part of, No Harm Done, which is an anthology of horror by Black authors. And then the third book, so Butcher Birds, it will have a new title, but not announcing it yet, but working on that as well. And so I've kind of just been busy with the writing bit. And that's kind of the bit that's important to me. And I always have to remind myself of that because sometimes I get caught up in like the feeling, of authors where like, I got to do all this marketing, I got to do all this stuff. And I have to constantly remind myself, I'm like, that's not like your job though. And my publisher, had given me a great marketing plan and I have every faith in them following through on that. And so I'm kind of like, chill, calm down, focus on your writing. And so that's kind of where I'm at with the duology and author life.
Yes, I didn't know about the anthology No Harm Done. Okay, is there a cover?
No, not yet.
Okay.
Yes.
We'll be waiting with bated breath. I think it's interesting that you mentioned essentially imposter phenomenon. That like you're like, oh my gosh, have I done enough when you have your debut as a smash hit, pulling down awards, and it's just getting so much play in libraries and people are really appreciating the representation of family. We'll get into that later. And Blood Like Fate is coming out and we're waiting, like the covers are beautiful, they're giving, you've got book deals coming up from like all these different things and you're still like, am I doing enough?
It's true, right? You're like, wait, what? But like, it hits us all for some reason and we suddenly forget all of this stuff that we have going on or all this stuff we're doing. And like, that's why I end up making these like lists of things of like wins that I've done throughout the year, because sometimes I'll be in a month and I'll be like, oh, woe is me, like nothing's going on. And like, maybe I'm actually just like slow motion failing. And then I'll look at the list and I'll be like, oh, all of this stuff happened this month. And you've just forgotten because it was at the beginning of the month and now it's the end of the month.
Just slow motion failing. I have never heard that. Am I actually just on a very, very slow descent and I just don't realize it? No, you were fast track winning. You came out the gate hot and you have not slowed down. But I think it's encouraging to hear authors who are doing so well admit that they're just like, yeah, I get hit by it too. Like there's no escape, which sounds hopeless, but is actually encouraging because it's like you could be like super early in the career, like unagented, just grinding out revision number 15 of your baby darling love manuscript, and you're like, this feels like hot garbage. And then hear an author that's like, sometimes it feels like hot garbage, and you're like, oh, we're having the same experience at different places. Okay, so this is just part of the process. You push it aside, you do the coping things, and then you just press on towards the mark. So I always think it's interesting hearing accomplished people express that they also sometimes feel like imposters.
Yeah.
I just find it so interesting.
It's every stage, like every stage of my writing process. I've gone through that whole thing and been like, oh yeah, no, it's fine, calm down.
This is me. Yeah. You earned this the whole way. The whole way, yes. Absolutely. And so one of the questions, speaking of your books, which you have complete control of, which I think is a really good grounding thought for authors, because publishing, traditional publishing can seem just like sound and fury. There's so much, there's editors and then the agents talking to the editors and contracts, and it just seems, and marketing, like the Twitter and Instagram and all the posts going out at what time, when should you send it? Like, it just seems like a tornado moving into your house. But remembering, like, you have full control over that project, over that book, over what you put out, I think is a really grounding thought. So thinking about Blood Like Magic, and even Blood Like Fate, since like we don't have it yet, but like you've put the final period in place. So hindsight being 2020, are there any things you would change about either of the books or the world of the duology now that you've got some distance?
I feel like the only thing that I would change would be like language in some cases. Like in the first book, like in the second book, I use enslavement instead of slavery, and locks instead of dreadlocks. And that's not the way it is in the first book. I'd change that just language wise. But I think for the book as a whole, no. I think partially because I don't think about those things, because I feel like once the book is out and you start thinking about, well, maybe I could change this, but you can't. Like, you can't change it. Like, you're not going to get to, even if you are like a huge author, you can't suddenly be retconning all this stuff in your book and like changing it, because your publisher is going to be like, no, that's not happening. And for me, you know, I try and move forward because I'm thinking about the full body of my work. I'm like, I can't really get stuck on each one book, because I'm like, it's the body of my work. And like, I expect my work to get better. Like, I expect my latest book that comes out to be better than my first book, but I'm still gonna love my first book. It's my first book, it's my debut. And so I think most that I can do is, you know, if there were things in the first book with writing the second book where I was like, I kind of feel like this should have been addressed or like pushed on more or talked about more, those are things that I brought into the second book. Because there are a lot of things in the first book that Voya hasn't learned, or she hasn't really thought about in depth, or things that she was like, yes, this is absolutely the right way for me to have gone about this. And then later on, she can think and be like, maybe that wasn't the absolute best way for me to have gone about this. But that's part of her journey. And so all that can't come into the first book, because otherwise, what is she going to learn in the second book, right? And so there are some things that are directly addressing things that happen in the first book, and where she's looking at them through a different perspective. So that's how I kind of think about it. It's not like things that I would change in the first book, but things that were seen in a different way in the first book that need to be addressed in the second book and seen in a different way. And so that's kind of, I guess, how I address how those things would happen. I always wish for my books that I could have magically made them shorter, but I really couldn't. If I could change it, I'd be like, it'd be awesome if this could be shorter, but there's no way I could have made it shorter.
That would be the real magic.
Yeah, I'm like, it is what it is. They're long books and I've made my peace with it. I go on through it. You know what it is. And
you know what it is by now. If you're here, you agreed to this.
Yes, exactly. So that's kind of how I feel. And especially like Blood Like Fate, like, I think because I am still closer to it, like I feel like I did put my period on it, though I may still have one more pass through. But I don't know. For the first book, I ended up doing 2 final pass page rounds. And the second one was like a surprise to me, because I thought I was done and then it appeared. So that might still happen for the second book, or might not. I'm not sure. And I probably should have asked, but I didn't. So we'll see. It'll be a surprise or not. But that last edit I did, I was like, yes, this is where I'm deciding. I'm doing my little tweaks. And after that, really, I have to just kind of make my peace with it as an author, because there's only so much you can stress about something that's already out there. And like, maybe one day down the line I'll be like, I should have done this with it, but can't do it. Just gotta move on to the next, learn something, and try and make sure that I do that in my next books going forward.
Hmm. So I get the switch from dreadlocks to locks. Why the switch from slavery to enslavement?
So I had just kind of heard discussions from people kind of talking about shifting that focus. Like we weren't slaves, we were
Right.
enslaved.
Enslaved, right.
Yeah, and so that's why I ended up making that shift because I agreed with
Okay.
that. Though you'll see some differences in the second book with who is calling it, talking about it that way.
Right.
So Mama Jova herself, who is from that time period, she says slave. I was a slave or things like that. Whereas the other characters are talking about it as enslavement, which I felt like aligned better. And I like doing that better because I feel like that fit with how I was thinking about it. And like
Okay.
my perspective was shifted in thinking about that difference with the wording. And so I liked keeping that.
Okay. Yeah, I have heard the conversation. I mean, it's been a conversation for a long time about like shifting, not divorcing personhood by saying enslaved person as opposed to slave, which is an objectified position. So you're just extending that into the institution as well. Got it. Okay, cool. I just had to ask that, but when you said there were things that Voya did that she was like, that was the best I could have done, and then she's gonna have like a perspective shift, I know for me, I'm gonna need us to reckon with what she did to Case at the end of that novel. Like, I need us to return to there quickly. What are you gonna do? I about screamed. I literally was like, what? And you're okay with this? Like the justifications. I was like, I'm a grown woman. I can't fight a child. But like, for real, square up. Like, Luke can't handle this. You can. I literally, like, Cache and I were screaming. We were just screaming at each other, at the book. We were just yelling.
Yeah.
We were just yelling. I cannot wait to see how that gets addressed in Blood Like Fate, but I absolutely agree and am excited with your perspective. I'm like, yeah, like if it's gonna be a series or a duology or something, the character can't learn everything the first time. Like, what are they gonna do in the second book? Are they gonna have new mistakes, or are they gonna be like that thing that I did last time that I swore was me learning my lesson actually was me just doing my usual fatal flaw thing with a different spin on it. So I'm really excited to see how Voya comes to view everything that happened at the end of the book and what's going to happen next, since Justin isn't really dead, which was plot twist.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, that's interesting. I feel like that's suffering more. Fully okay with that. So I was like, but it feels like, especially if you're going to do spinoff stuff, I'm like, I wonder if he's going to get out one day. We have to deal with him again.
It's going to be very interesting in the book. I think it's going to be really interesting. And to me, it's, when I think about the sequel and I think about the whole like of it as a series, it is really interesting to me because I'm thinking very much through the lens of the character and what the character is trying to learn and what they think they have learned or think they have not learned. And also for teens, like for me, I'm like, your decisions aren't perfect as a teen. And there are times where you think they are perfect. And then maybe later on, you look at them different through the lens of more experiences and you're like, well, maybe not, or maybe these things, I was right on, or maybe this one, and you can kind of change your mind. And for me, like, it's important thinking of teens and like their development and their lives to represent that, I find. So that's what I really enjoyed about the second book is like getting to go through all of that and like getting to see a character deal with consequences, which is how I kind of described the sequels. I was like, Voya is dealing with all the consequences of the things that she did in the
them choices that you could not make have consequences.
Yeah, and it's really hard for her as a person that struggled so hard with making decisions because she was so afraid of how things would turn out and the consequences of those, to now be directly in a position of reckoning with all of that. And so yeah, I'm excited. It was really fun for me. Like there's more twists because I'm obsessed with them. And so it was really exciting for me to put in all those twists and to have characters come back in from the first book, because there are also characters from the first book whose arcs weren't completed on purpose. And so they're kind of reckoning with their own arcs being completed in this book, or on the way to almost completion, and things like that. So yeah, I'm very excited about people reading the sequel, and seeing all of that come together. And so, yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Wow. Wow.
And for the Case stands, Case will have her moment.
Yes!
She will have her
She
moment.
does.
She is definitely saying her thoughts.
Good. I literally, and she spoke her mind in the first one, so I was like,
true.
I need the second one for Case to be like, square up.
Yeah, even more. Case holds nothing back in the second book. So.
August 9th, come here. Actually, wait, because I have a lot of deadlines before that. But also August 9th, come here. Wow. Wow. Is there an audiobook?
There should be. I'm pretty sure. Nobody said this is 100% happening to me, but I'd be very surprised if there wasn't. Okay. So yeah.
Great. Because it'll take me a lot longer to read it if there's not an audiobook, but I'm like, I need all the smoke and fire from Case. And I can't wait to get it because I know she's going to bring it to us. I know that she is. I can't wait. I can't wait. Okay, let's switch from BLM for a second and go into your amazing channel. So your channel, Liselle Sambury, is so educational and so really, really transparent, which is one of the things I appreciate about it most. You talking about your query letter, sharing it in the description box, talking about how to deal with like author taxes, talking about small and big advances. Like, it's really, really brave how transparent you are on your channel. And I can confidently say it's one of my top 10 early career resources for things. And so I'm wondering, how do you think of your channel? Do you think of it as a labor of love? Do you think of it as like giving back? Do you think of it as an instruction manual? How do you think about your channel?
Well, thank you, first of all. And secondly, I think about my channel in kind of two parts in a way. Like for me, part of it is giving back because, you know, when I was like querying or I was on submission, I was like searching out all of those resources. I couldn't find a ton. And so it was nice to be able to contribute in that way. I also couldn't find a ton from BIPOC authors specifically. And so I also felt like that would be really helpful to add my perspective to that as well. And so that was something I really wanted to do. And I wanted to try and be as transparent as possible with a lot of things, just to be able to share that experience. And then on the other hand, for me, well, it's fun. I like video production. I like being able to do those sorts of things and edit videos. That was something I wanted to get into and learn more about, and I still want to learn more about it. So that was something I was really interested in. And it's also like, it's a good record keeping for me, which I didn't really realize as much until I had like finished writing Butcher Birds and it had gone on submission and sold and all of that. And then I was able to look back on like and make a playlist from the start of me starting that book. And I realized I could look through and see my entire journey of working on a book, of finishing it, editing it, sending it to my agent, working on it again, putting it on submission, being like, okay, I guess we'll see. And then having it sell and being able to announce the book deal. And that was really exciting for me because that was like the first book that I went through that full process doing, and like being able to look back on that and like see videos where I was like talking through ideas and being like, oh my God, yeah, I remember when I thought there was gonna be like a physical weird swamp monster thing in Butcher Birds, and then I was like, no, that's a bad idea. I switched it. And like I remember when I didn't know anything about plants and I was watching YouTube videos to learn stuff about plants, and now I have like a giant collection because I got so into it and obsessed with it. And so Yeah, it's really cool to see that direction, you know, even the like couple clips I took on submission, because I thought my submission period was going to be a lot longer than it ended up being. But even those clips of like, you know, being anxious and like being in down and being like, I don't know, maybe this won't sell and maybe she won't like it, because I remember weirdly thinking very firmly that my editor was not going to like it. For whatever reason, and then kind of coming out the other side and having it sell, and now being in the process of getting all this stuff done for it, and like getting to be able to share all that stuff going forward. And so that's something I've really appreciated about the channel, is being able to look back on that, because it's really easy to forget a lot of those things as you go forward. And so now I have this like record here, while also being able to share that journey for people that maybe are on that for the first time.
100%. Are we gonna get a book trailer like we got for Blow Like Magic? You're spoiling us.
I'm going to see what happens. So there will probably be one. I'm just like, am I going to make it, or is my publisher going to make it? I'm not sure, because I'm not sure everything they have planned for it yet, because it's still like pretty early days. So we'll see what happens when it like comes further down the line. I usually end up making the trailer like, I want to say like 2 weeks before, maybe 1 week before sometimes.
Okay, we got plenty of time to wait for that.
So lots of time to work it in. So, and then I have all that footage because I made a little trailer for Butcher Words before NaNoWriMo, before I even wrote it. And I like took all this footage.
With the timers? The wilderness timers?
Yeah, so there's that footage, and then like when I think a video announcing my nano project, I did a little trailer there as well. So like I have a bunch of like actual video footage to work with, so we'll see.
Can we know, is it going to be a standalone or a series? Standalone. Is that classified? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So the next 2 books are both standalones. I kind of, that's how I like to think of things. I kind of want to go like series standalone, ideally, just because then I kind of get a break from doing the series, and I can do 2 like completely standalone books, and then I can like try a series again. So that's kind of what I'm trying to do, whether that will end up being what I actually do or not. But yeah, it's fun, and it's refreshing to do a standalone and be like, this is the whole story.
Yeah, I can imagine. I have yet to, all my whips right now are series. Yeah. I'm like, wow, it must be nice to write one book and then be done. So
I feel like that's very much the way for a lot of fantasy authors. Like,
yeah, I have not read many standalone fantasies.
Yeah.
I think the only one I even own right now is Daughters of Jubilation by Carly Cawthron.
Oh, yeah.
Can't even think of another one right now. Oh, and also Brittany Lewis's forthcoming The Undead Truth of Us, which is like more spec and horror than fantasy, but that's going to be a standalone. So
also coming out on August 9th.
Really?
Yeah.
I know it was August. Wow, look at that. You are in good company.
Yeah.
You're in good company. Are you going to just do your channel indefinitely? Do you have a stop date in mind? Or are you just like, till the wheels fall off, or I feel tired, I'm going to do this channel?
Basically, that's kind of how I think about it. Just kind of like, well, I'll just keep doing it until, you know, if I got to a point where I was like, I don't want to do this anymore, then maybe I would stop there. Or if I got to a point where I was like, I literally have no good ideas anymore, and I'm just like churning out to churn out. Or if I was like, I guess like outrageously busy for some reason, like super ridiculously busy, where I was like, I'm gonna collapse if I have to do all of that. But I think even then I would probably just like cut things down. Like I do like 1 video a month, or like 1 video every 2 weeks, or something like that. I think I would have to truly just be like, I'm tired of YouTube stuff. Yeah, that's kind of the only thing I can think of, because I like it being accessible to everyone. I know some people like make Patreons and things, and then kind of like shift their content. Shift their content to Patreon, but then I kind of, you know, I want a lot of information to be outside of a paywall, so I'll probably just continue on.
Okay, so you're like, Patreon's not for me. I'm gonna keep it on
I
YouTube.
just like don't know what to do with Patreon. And then I kind of just like, I'm too tired to deal with that right now.
Yeah,
Just
that's a
do
whole nother
both.
platform for sure.
Yeah.
There are the tiers. It can be a lot to keep up with
Yeah.
just from
Exactly.
like the Patreon that I have seen. I'm like, that is very well thought out, and
Mhm.
I can't think that much right now. Not about that. So yeah,
Yeah. And it's more content because now you've
yes,
committed to and like exclusive content. So you
yeah,
can't be like
using
repurposing
it.
stuff
Yeah,
you already have.
yeah.
You need to create brand new original exclusive content. And now people are paying you. So you gotta like you can't just be throwing stuff up there. You
Maybe
gotta
half
like
stepping,
do stuff that people paid for.
man, because they will call you out. I've
Yeah,
had
exactly.
subscribers ask me for videos, and they ain't even paying me.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, if you were paying me $5 a month, you might get real aggressive with that request.
Yeah.
I'm gonna stay
It's
on YouTube
true.
for right now. I'm gonna stay in the land of the free right now.
Yeah.
Where
Agreed.
I don't have no income from it, but I also don't have the demands.
Yeah, YouTube is very much like it's a thing that I'm doing because I enjoy it.
Yes.
And like that was part of like what I thought was fun about, I did a video about like my finances and like streams of income and like how I make it a year. And I was like, this is how tiny the YouTube
Yes.
space is. I was like, I'm
Yep.
not here to make money.
Right. That's really why I asked you, because I'm like, we've seen that it's not making you oodles.
Yeah,
So labor of love.
yeah, exactly.
Okay. Well, I'm glad because getting to go through the journey, through your journey of like, querying, submission, taxes, all these things like that does demystify what's going to happen. Like, it's not some huge abyss of like success. It's like, yes, you celebrate this thing and then these things happen and here's how you go through them and here are the ups and downs. Like, I really, really appreciate seeing the clips where it's like, working through anxiety about X thing, as opposed to like, I got this award and this award and this award and everything is just amazing. It's like, share the awards, absolutely, but also share the real. Like, yeah, I forgot I got that award a couple times, honestly. I had to remind myself that I was winning. So yeah, I'm excited that we will get more of your journey,
Yeah.
perhaps a little selfishly, but I'm still glad.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. And hopefully, I'll be able to go out and do more things, and it'll be like I felt bad for my channel. I was like, I had my channel for a short period and then COVID hit and I was like, I'm inside all the time.
We are
So
here. Right here.
hopefully things will improve and I'll be able to get out there and do some more, exploring. And this
Mm-hmm.
year I'm going to be doing a research trip to Kingston, Ontario. So at the very least, I will for sure get outside then. So
Yeah,
yeah,
research trip. I'm excited for that video.
yeah.
I'm excited for that. Okay, switching back to Blood Like Magic. One of my favorite things about this book, besides this amazing cover where we get this girl with very clearly 4C, huge hair, love it all, young, it's just gorgeous. One of my favorite things about Foya's family, about Foya, was how much of her family we got. And so as a reader, I was like, eating well. As a writer, I was like, how in the world? So, what was the process of tending to each one of those family members and their history? And how did you keep from being overwhelmed?
So it's so funny about the characters in the family because when I was writing it originally, I had no thought in my brain about the number of family members. I was just kind of like, yeah, I have a big family and she's going to have a big family. And this is like, I think enough cousins. And I think this is enough cousins. And now we need like these family members. And then I just kind of had ideas for who I felt they were and their personalities and like what was kind of important to each of them. And I was like, okay, deciding on something that was important to each character and like picking out their gifts and things like that. And then I was just writing because Blood Like Magic was mostly discovery written because I did not understand plotting correctly yet. So it was a lot of that. So that was kind of how I started with the characters. And it was in revisions where I had to really nail down each character. And I was like, okay, I gotta kind of decide more what each person is thinking and what they're caring about. And I believe it was from my editor, it was a note of like, I need to know what each character cares about, because in earlier drafts, like some characters, like what they were caring about and their opinions were converging and kind of melting together. So it was like, you know, Auntie May's Granny and Uncle Kathy's all have this one opinion. And then these three other characters all have this one opinion. And it wasn't really like, the note was basically like, but would they all actually have that same opinion? And so I ended up then just like writing a bullet point list of every single character. And I was like, okay, what do they want Voya to do? And why do they want her to do that? And are they going to do anything to steer her in that direction that they want her to be in? And then I listed them all out and thought about the intricacies of each character and their personality and how they would think. So even though, for example, Granny and Uncle Cathius will both have a similar idea of what they want Voya to do, aka you should listen to the ancestors and you should kill that boy. They're gonna have different ways that they go about it. So for Granny, she wants to kind of be like, well, the task is the task and I don't really interfere. And this is about you listening to the ancestors, but like kind of on the side, maybe I'm thinking about I secret interfere and like having to layer that in, versus Uncle Kathy is just being like, this is my point. And whenever it's brought up, I'm gonna let you know that's my point without any shame or care very much for if I'm being too blunt or not. But I'm not really planning to do anything, but also I'll just kind of follow what Granny does. And so I had to really intricately think through each character. And then that ended up playing out in their arcs, in that they're all kind of approaching the task in different ways. They all have different ideas of what they think boys should do, and they're all asserting their opinions in different ways. And so then some characters also naturally clashed because of that, because they would have differing opinions. And, you know, like Keisha and Alex clashed because of that. That's kind of how their personalities ended up coming together in that way. Whereas other characters, you know, may have kept more things on their own or to themselves. And then it also created conflict between the other characters that was even separate from Voya, because they're now clashing because they're difference of opinion as well. So it started out very loose. In the way that I was doing it, I was just kind of like, these are the personalities for the characters, and I was just holding that all in my head. And then at some point I ended up having to like bullet point list out and decide very firmly on the stance of each character and how they were going to assert themselves in that way. And that ended up being really helpful. For one, it helped stop characters from blending together because they didn't have the same opinions, even when they technically had the same opinion. And even, you know, like Priya and the dad, they have their own stance on it, but they're expressing themselves in very different ways. And so Priya was kind of like, okay, I don't want to tell you what to do, but also you really should, like, you know, do the thing that you're supposed to do.
Which I was surprised.
Like,
I was surprised by Priya's take. I was like, look at her. Look at her. Okay then, Priya. Respect. Go on there.
Yeah. And that ended up helping her character a lot because, you know, in the original draft, she just kind of agreed with the dad and was quiet on that, and it made her character really fade a lot into the background. And so once she had her own way that she was asserting her opinion, then she ended up pushing more away as her own character. And so that ended up being like a super helpful note for me, because when you have a lot of characters, you know, you really do want to make them as distinct as possible. Even in a book where, you know, it's about Voya and it's about teenagers, so I don't want the adult characters to be like taking over the book, but they do need to assert themselves in some way. I really like make pains to not write books in which like family and parents like disappear, and they like have no influence on the kids or anything like that, because, you know, that's also not how I grew up. My family was involved in my stuff, and if I was stressed about something, I was going to tell my mom and ask questions and things like that. So that's kind of how I tried to think about that family. But yeah, when I was doing it early on, I truly did not click about the number of characters until I was having beta readers and they were like, wow, you do so well juggling all these characters. And I was like, oh yeah, there are a lot of them.
There's so, and that's just the people that are living.
Yeah.
The mamas, that's a whole different situation. The auntie who Voya is looking for, like, that's like the ancestors are just as much care on this character list as the living, and that just doubles the immersion also, though, because you are fully in Voya's life. Like, you're into family history, you're into like petty family squabbles, you're into serious family drama, like you're really like in it with her.
Yeah,
for sure. So no, I really resonate, as anyone who's been on this channel for any amount of time knows, pet peeve when I read YA fantasy where they ain't got no parents. It doesn't make any sense to me. I'm just like, surely some children are being raised this way, but it is being overrepresented in the literature.
Yeah.
Y'all know y'all could not disappear to Narnia and your parents have no questions about where you've been for the past 48 hours. And you just walk in like, yeah, we having hot wings for lunch. Like, what?
Yeah.
After about the second hour of my mom not being quite sure where I am, if it even got that far, like, where are you? 30 minutes, no answer. Where are you? It would be I would come back to SWAT.
Yeah,
So
it's true. And I totally remember my mom and grandma, like, I didn't come home when I was supposed to, and they were like out looking for me. And I like saw them and I like jumped the fence and I tried to run home like I had been home the whole time, which they had none of it. They were like, we know.
Oh, exactly. Wow, yeah, it really reads like the family not being around as part of the fantasy. So I really enjoyed the Thomas clan, and also like seeing other families, like seeing these bereaved parents looking for their daughter Lauren, like just seeing all the different families that make up the community was just, it made it more immersive, but it was also just more real, because yes, it's a fantasy with sci-fi influences, but there's just more buy-in for me as a reader if every single element of the story is not completely impossible. Like having a family and parents who are like, where you at and what you doing. And also, I do know some of your drama, I just let you have it. Like those little things where it's like, that is the family. Like that is family.
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed it. Very well done. Chef's kiss.
Thank you.
Chef's kiss. And so you've talked on your channel and in interviews about the sort of scene that originated the novel of this teenage girl sitting in a bath of blood. And so which ends up being the first scene in Blood Like Magic. And so I wonder, one, was that your favorite scene? And if it wasn't, there's another one. Did you have a favorite scene that was your favorite when you first conceived of Blood Like Magic? And did it stay the same even after you finished the final draft? Like, did your favorite scene stay the same or did it like switch?
It's really interesting because when I was like drafting and going through it, I hadn't thought of a favorite scene. It was only when like I was being asked it in interviews where I was like, oh, well, let me think about that. And I think maybe the first scene didn't end up being my favorite scene because I had conceived of it so early, and it was just kind of like, this is where it starts. And so it didn't feel necessarily like a favorite scene. And then like even the scenes that I really like, I feel like they're not like necessarily like favorites in that like, I love this and this is like the best and most exciting scene. Sometimes it's just the scenes that I thought had interesting character work that I really liked, like that scene with Mama Jova and Voya in her memory. For me, like the character work of that, of, you know, an ancestor trying to impart a lesson on you, which is a very hard lesson, which is a very frankly traumatizing lesson, and trying to be like, I'm seeing something of my life in your life, and Voya being like, nope, nothing like my life. This is very different from my life. I have never once ever suffered in this way. I've never dealt with this sort of thing. We are not similar in any
Right.
way.
We're not
You are
having a moment right now.
confused. And then to have that clash continue by her Mama Jola being like, well, this is my task for you, and it's like way harder than usual, and it's like way more complicated than usual, but say yes to me. And Voya being like, no, I can't say yes to that. And I find that to be really interesting for me, because I liked it as a scene because it really showed the disconnect. And like, even though Voya is living in this world, in this life where she has this intimate connection to her ancestors, it doesn't mean that they automatically understand each other. And knowing what happened to your ancestor isn't the same as experiencing and understanding what they're trying to teach you. And so that's what I ended up really liking about that scene, is having that confrontation, like, you know, that question of, if I could communicate with my ancestors, what would that be like? And how would that change things, and how would that make things different? And Voya has this direct confrontation of that experience. And she comes out from it being completely overwhelmed, just being like, I have no idea how I'm supposed to learn from you, or how we're supposed to connect together. And I like that because it creates that journey for them, and it creates that journey for Voya, who technically has had access to her ancestors her whole life, to go that next level and understand and really have that empathetic experience, and to feel properly connected, to not just be reading about something that she knows on a tablet, to actually connect and understand and like delve deep into what that connection means.
Yeah. Wow. It's so deep. I love it. Yeah, that scene, all of the scenes with Mama Jova really were hard. Like, especially that first one where we meet her, it was so hard. I appreciated the content warning.
That's why I was like, I need to put a content warning for this, because I was like, it's a difficult thing, and you know, it's an active scene, and I was like, I'm gonna put a content warning. It's like, people know, people want to jump around, people, this is like not for them. I want people to know that.
Because often when we get scenes involving the past, it's passive, it's a flashback, you're just spectator. But Voya was pulled very actively into that scene where she's experiencing it, not the same way that Mama Jova is experiencing it, but she is still being pulled back into that. She's not just a spectator. There are consequences for her being there. Like, it is really an active interaction with the past.
Yeah, exactly, which is what I wanted. And I wanted Mama Jova to be able to provide that commentary on her own experience. She's like, this was my life, and this was my experience, and this is what I'm sharing about it with you, versus kind of just Voya seeing it and taking away only her own feelings and opinions without getting to interact with what the person that actually experienced that is trying to communicate and share.
Yeah, and Mama Jova was very firm about her own experience. She was like, no, you're not the lesson giver. I'm the lesson giver. Listen to me. And that interaction also very well highlighted what, I mean, we already knew what Voya's character, like, fatal flaw was going to be, because she said a lot, and everyone around her was saying a lot. You are not good at making decisions. But there's a confrontation, a sort of like, I guess, the debate at the end of Act 1. Like, there's that, what are you gonna do? When Mama Jova gives her the task and she fails it for her indecisiveness the first time, and then she's like, I'll give you one more time. Here is a seemingly like a larger decision with higher stakes than just your own magic. And so I wonder, with such a clear, with Voya's arc being so clear, and with her sort of internal obstacle or internal struggle of indecisiveness being so clear, how did you decide on that one specifically?
So for me, with the indecisiveness, that came really early on, because once I had kind of decided what situation the girl in the Bath of Blood was in, and like her having to have a coming of age, and like having to choose something to pass it, then I was like, well, who's the worst character to be in this situation? And I was like, a girl who can't make decisions. she's the worst person to be in this situation, to have to make a really difficult decision.
Yeah.
And she's put in that, and it's true, everyone is reiterating that to her. So this thing that she already felt about herself, everyone is constantly being like, oh yeah, that's like a thing. And you know, in some ways to me, like, that's family, like being like, oh yeah, that thing you're real bad at, you're
Telling you about yourself constantly.
Yeah. And so that was like decided on very early on, because it felt like that was going to be the worst situation for her to be in. And then I ended up, you know, over time kind of deciding what her arc really needed to be, because I think, you know, the clear arc is like, you know, you're an indecisive person and you learn to make decisions, but I ended up through the process kind of being like, well, there needs to be kind of something deeper into that, and something more that she's trying to achieve, and something that she's scared of. Like, why is she so scared of making these decisions? And like, what is it that she really wants to do and really wants to decide for herself, but isn't? And so that ended up getting pulled into the book as well, and kind of being part of that arc coming together at the end with, you know, the discussion that she has with Mama Jova about what she really wants to do with her life, that she's been kind of denying herself this whole time, because she's like, well, I'm bad at making decisions and I'm bad at doing this stuff, so I can't do anything like that for sure, because that would require that of me, and I've never had that skill.
Yeah. Is there anything that you can tell us, which maybe the answer is no, is there anything that at the end of Blood Like Magic you were like, I have to handle this, and Blood Like Fate? Can you answer that without spoilers?
How can I answer that? So the whole thing, like, there's a whole like new gene element and like things that happen with that. I was like, okay, so I've got to handle in future how Voya and her family are going to interact with that company, given things that happen. I've got to address, there is a character death. I was like, I've got to address that, and like how everybody's dealing with that. And I've really got to address kind of the community things, because there were things going on in the community that weren't necessarily fully solved or fully brought together. And so those things, I was like, that has to come together. And like a lot of those things that I thought of beforehand, before I had gotten to the final edit stage, because I had done the plot synopsis for Blood Like Fate when I was on submission with Blood Like Magic. So I had decided on a bunch of things before we had even gotten into the editing process with my publisher. And so a lot of that was like, okay, I have all these things decided. And so a lot of things in the first book were purposefully not finished, because I was aware that I was going to finish them in the second book. But of course, I still wanted it to feel like a complete book. And I wanted to feel like it could stand alone, which sometimes I'm like, maybe I did too well, because a lot of people will be like, is this a series or a standalone? And I'm like, did you think I would end it like that?
No, I was definitely getting at least one more from where it ended. Like, first of all, on Case alone, we have to come back. There's no way. But also just the other like Voya being a matriarch now, like that did not seem like a period. It seemed definitely like a comma or a semicolon. Like that thread was definitely very clearly left to me. I don't know. I was definitely getting duology vibes from it.
Yeah, exactly. So I was like, a lot of those things have to be solved. And then for me, also, when I went into the second book, I was like, okay, now I have to also think about the new challenge for Voya. Because I think like looking at duologies and researching and things like that, you know, and series in general, there's this option that you have your character dealing with kind of the same struggle, lie, fatal flaw, whatever you want to call it, and you spread it across 2 books, and they kind of solve some of it in the first one, and then they solve the rest of it in the next one. And I wanted to do it where we were going to be looking at a different lie or different sort of fatal flaw in the second book, and going with that. So then I also had to think about what is the new challenge for her in this book, and what is the new thing that she's struggling with. because, you know, you've learned how to make decisions now. So what is going to be the new thing that you are going to work on? And so I had to think about that as well, and how that was going to affect the rest of the story and things like that. So yeah, there were like a good amount of things that I was like, well, these need to be reckoned with in some way, and we're gonna have to do that in the second book. So a lot of that, and then just things I wanted to do more of, like I wanted to show more of the Black witch community. So you'll get to see members from all 5 families in this book. And so we've expanded out in that way. I wanted to get more into that as well. And so a lot of responsibility for Voya that she didn't expect to have, and is now dealing with in the sequel. So a lot of exciting things there. And it's nice because I also get to dive a bit deeper into the existing families. So the Davis family members, some of the kids from that family are getting a brighter spotlight in this book, and are getting to be more major players. And you're also kind of getting to see a bit more into that family, because for most of the first book, Voya thinks of that family as being kind of the best of them, despite their very obvious flaws, and kind of handling things a lot better than her family. And in the second book, she gets to see that maybe there are actually a lot more cracks in that family than she expected, and some released backstory about more like inter-family connections that we didn't know about before because Voya didn't know about them. So yeah, it's exciting. I think it's going to be a really good conclusion to a duology. And in that one, I have a very clear favorite scene, because I was like, every time I read it, I get so excited. And yeah, so that's kind of the sequel and what it's going to reckon with.
Okay, I'm so excited because you do big cast really well. Like I was into the Thomases, but then also the Davis family, the Mitchell family. Like there was so much, even with them, where it was like, okay, well, they're still into like the blood magic where they're doing like sacrifices or that, like the darker form of magic. Like they're still doing that, and then Voya gets involved in it. Oh, this family like sort of disappeared, or this matriarch and her daughter. Like you did all of that really well, where it wasn't overwhelming. It just felt very lush and very full. Like, yeah, there are just lots of people. We're not going to get into all of them, but we'll see them. And so getting to see more of them now, it's like, oh, that's exciting. That's exciting. I didn't get too much of them. I got just enough to be like, to give me a clear view out the window. And now it's like, well, now we're going to take a walk down the street. So
yeah, that was like the thing, like let's explore like these core families that are definitely connected all together. And then in this next one, okay, now you understand the drama of these core families. Welcome to the drama of the entire community.
Oh, I can only imagine Voya dealing with that when she just learned to make a decision. And now it's like, oh, now I have 1,000 decisions.
Yeah,
I just need a moment in the back room, please. I'll be right back. I can only imagine. So I'm very, very excited for Blood Like Fate and what is on tap for that. Speaking of those 2 books together, since you sort of have been thinking about them together since the beginning, with the synopsis of the second one already on your mind as you're writing the first one, if you had to do one word for each book, a word for Blood Like Magic, a word for Blood Like Fate, what would they be?
Oh gosh. I think for Blood Like Magic, fractured, and for Blood Like Fate, reformed.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. I think
fractured and reformed. I mean, I'm definitely seeing some fracturing in Blood Like Magic. I'm excited to see how it is reformed and Blood Like Fate for sure. I wonder, are we gonna see Luke in Blood Like Fate?
Yes, he will be in it. He will be in it.
All right.
I was like, that's why it's so hard to talk about the sequel if people haven't read Blood Like Magic, because then it's like, they're like, oh, so what's happening in Bud Light Fate? And I can't say, oh yeah, Luke is in it, because if people haven't read the first book, they don't know
Right. Huge
that he's
spoiler.
still kicking. So anytime in the second book, I'm like, this is so hard to
I will put spoiler in the thing so they
book.
know if you press
But
play,
yeah,
it's at your own risk.
he's in the second book. There's a lot of angst. There's a lot of Voya Luke angst and pining and like really on Voya's end.
Obviously.
Yes.
Obviously. Voya's a born piner.
Yes, exactly. But yeah, he is there. He appears. He's got his moments. His siblings are also in there. And yeah, it's exciting. I'm happy about how everything came together.
Wow. As soon as you said his siblings, I was like,
And he
oh
gets
yeah,
to talking
more
to
consequences.
too. He's doing some reckoning himself.
I'm glad. I am glad for that. It was like, boy, you wasn't the only one out there making these Basuda decisions.
Yeah.
There were lots of decisions flying about.
It's true.
Especially at the end there were many decisions being made.
Yeah.
Okay, so, I'm excited for that, for sure.
Yeah. This is like the book where everyone gets a stern talking to.
I can't. Oh my gosh, you're getting me so psyched for this sequel. And it's not even your marketing time yet. Okay, switching from the duology and moving the last few questions and on just like author stuff. With all the drama on Twitter, especially lately, like last week, it was just crazy of agents leaving the industry and calling out agencies that aren't technically like agencies, but are still having these questionable practices. Does it cause you any sort of anxiety as an early career writer, just all of the fluctuations of Tribe Club? And if it does, how do you deal with it? And if it doesn't, how do you guard against it?
So for me, on the agent end, it's more like that sort of stuff is like information that I pack away, because I want to know, if I'm in a mentorship situation or just like giving information to people that are querying, I want to make sure that I'm keeping up with agencies that are being exposed, so I can be like, please don't query them. We don't want to get in that situation. Please take care of these people. So I always pay attention to those, like in public and also in like whisper networks and things like that. I want to make sure that I kind of like have an ear out, even if I'm not actively querying right now, just like, because I'm in contact with people who are querying or wanting to query soon. And I want to like make sure that I can be like, P.S. please don't put yourself in this situation, don't get involved with these people, because I want people to avoid predatory relationships and agency. And so on that end, I'm like, I feel less connected, though I'm like, this is all very messy behavior. Whereas like the editor and like that sort of leaving, or people leaving publishing, is more affecting of me, because that's where I'm more playing around in the field. And it's been like, it's been an ongoing issue that publishers are generally not paying assistants enough, especially those that are living in New York, especially BIPOC people trying to get into the industry, doing internships where they're not being paid and they still have to support themselves living in a big city, having to do multiple jobs, things like that. And that also extends to agents, agents who are also doing their day job as well, who are not just agents, who are also struggling to keep up and live in those conditions. Like, it's really difficult. And I've been following people that are like, well, what can we do to kind of help or support, and like trying to spread the word and things like that, because that is the sort of thing that publishers need to definitely do better at. And we know that the money is there, like publishing has been making more money than ever. So there is money to be given to people that are working in that industry, making the industry the money that they are getting. And editors and publicists and like all those people you're working with are super invaluable. And so those are things that are kind of like always there. And I think I've always had, a pretty good, I guess, head about it. I remember my agent saying to me, because it was something about when we were on submission, I was like, oh, yeah, and I'm really happy to continue with Sarah because she seems like she's going to be an editor forever. And my agent was like, you don't know who's going to be an editor forever. You don't really know the circumstances. And like, yeah, I want to work with her and that's great and that's awesome, but we can't ever say, oh, this person's never going to leave publishing.
Right.
Because we don't actually know, which is again one of those things I appreciate my agent for, because she was like, oh, well, let's
just manage those expectations.
That's great, and maybe not, but we can't really, that can't play as much into your decision because you really don't know. And that's like its own thing. And so, yeah, I think, I'm always like, I hope my editor and my agent stay in this business forever because I really like working with them. But I also understand that, people have to eat, people have to live, and if you're in an industry and they're not doing that for you and they're not able to meet those needs, then like it makes sense that you would have to move on. And so I hope that publishers will get better and improve, but it's hard to say. I was like, at the end of the day, it's still a corporation. It's a corporation supporting art, but it's a corporation nonetheless.
Right. Definitely. Whew, so much. Everyone has to keep their ear to the streets and also their head in their therapist office. Like, it's just so much. It is so much. Is there a question that you never get asked in interviews that you wish that you did?
Trying to think on anything. I don't think so. I think I usually get asked. Yeah, I never have anything else in my, maybe it's just my head is like too empty, but it's just like I never have anything where I'm like, my God, I'm burning to talk about this. Nobody ever asks me about it.
Okay, great. Well, I'm glad you're having comprehensive interviews. Okay, so Blood Like Magic is set in the near future. It's 2049.
Yeah.
Okay, so this last question is a near future question. We are in the future. It's 35 years from now. What is something that you want your readers to say about your books, your body of work? What do you want your readers to be able to say about Liselle Sambury's books?
I guess that they love them, that they're really excited by them, that they enjoy them, but also that they feel like they're getting something deeper than just the surface story from it. They feel like they're engaged with the themes and feel like they are able to see something of themselves in the stories. I think at base, I always am like, I want you to like it, but I also want it to sit with you. Like I want my books to be books that people are thinking about after they've read it. I don't want it to be something where people put it down and then it's like out of your head. Like, I think, there's always like books that are like super entertainment books and they're in some ways like meant to be like that. Like, and you go on to the next and the next and the next and the next. But I do put a lot of effort and work into my themes and like having deeper layers in my story. And so I'd really love it for those to sit with people after they are finished the book and to sit with it in a way that like feels good and feels positive, and feels like something that they are thinking about and still engaging with after the story's done.
Absolutely. And I think I'm gonna read Liselle's dedication in Blood Like Magic, so I think it just perfectly echoes and underscores what she just said, and also just is a perfect snapshot of the kind of writer Liselle is and the kind of responsibility she takes for her readers. So the dedication to Blood Like Magic: to Black girls everywhere, you can be more than a slave or a lesson for someone else. You deserve to be a witch or a dragon tamer. to fall in love with the vampire or leave your friends against a villain. You are more than the best friend or sassy comedic relief. You are the hero. And I think that one of the things I'm looking forward to being able to say about Lizelle's books is that she always gave us Black girls who are heroes. And so if you have not read Blood Like Magic, go get it. If you haven't, I don't know how you got through all this interview because you've had mucho spoilers, but the spoilers didn't come close to giving you the breadth of this book. You see her, she's thick with 2 C's, okay? Definitely go read this book if you have not. Even just refresh for Blood Like Fate. And Blood Like Fate is available for pre-order, I believe, right?
Yes.
Yes. So if you have read Blood Like Magic and you were salivating for Blood Like Fate, pre-orders really, really help the author. Even just going to a bookstore and saying, hey, are you going to have this? Can you make sure that it's on the shelves on release day? Going to libraries if you can't afford to buy the book, that's fine. Libraries can pre-order as well. They'll buy it as well. Can you have this for me? And they absolutely will. So there are so many ways to pre-order that cost your money or that costs your local library's money. Either one of those help the author. So definitely go do those. Please join me in thanking Liselle for being with us today. Comment below just love for Liselle, for her books forthcoming, all these different things. Just show love in the comments. Y'all have a wonderful day. Bye.
Bye.